Today I wanted to make a video guide to the Japanese utility pole plates and how they vary by region. This is easily one of the most useful clues for region guessing in Japan, and one of the, at least in my opinion, also easier to learn. There are great docs and GeoGuessr maps for learning these already, but I figure some people find it easier to learn through a video. I'll go region by region and explain the features of each, including like size, shape, company logos, character arrangement, etc. And I'll also go roughly in my like how easy they are to identify. At the end, I'll also talk about some like special cases and a few advanced steps. This video definitely won't include every little thing there is to know, but should make a very significant difference. On a similar note, there are some fringe cases or exceptions for every rule, but definitely very consistent in terms as far as GeoGuessr metas go. So just take in every available clue each round. For each region, I'll show a map of the prefecture. Of the prefectures it includes, and some sample locations. And I'll probably put the graphics and locations I use in a doc at the end, and I'll link that in the description. So with all that out of the way, we're going to start with Hokkaido, which, as I'm sure many of you know, is the northernmost of the four main islands that make up Japan. To get right into it, Hokkaido plates are usually identified by being filled with characters, both numbers, kanji, and other characters, at least compared to other plates that we will see. And they're also larger, both horizontally and vertically, than most other plates we will see. So this right here is an example of one of them. Here's a picture example. The numbers you see here will actually mean something, but that's something we'll go over in the advanced tips at the end. They can also be yellow in some cases, and while we're at it, before we get too far into it, it's also worth noting that while there are um, a specific plate for each region, most of the time polls will have that region specific plate and also a national plate because it's being serviced by both the national company and the regional one. So this is smaller basic one as an example of the um, national ones, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so this is Hokkaido, one of the easier ones to tell for sure, because even from a distance you can tell when they're larger. Um, and also, and additionally, Hokkaido is one of the easier regions to identify even without the plates, but still useful. Moving next to Tohoku, which is the northernmost part of Honshu, like the main island that makes up Japan. Niigata Prefecture here is one of the special cases that we'll go over at the end, but the rest of these ones highlighted in blue, Aomori, Akita, Iwate, Miyagi, Yanagata, Fukushima, are ones that could be considered generic. So now I wanted to real quick talk about the national plates, because this is just another example. They're what I'm going to be referred to as the standard size and shape. And they can either have very often this logo or just the letters NTT on them, and that's how they can be identified. And they're not region specific and will be found on most poles throughout Japan. Now to get back to Tohoku plates, they can be identified by being relatively small, or I guess, or short horizontal rectangles. Here's we have another national plates with this logo. But this has this logo. The Tohoku logo is like a circle with a lightning bolt through it, and the plate does normally have the logo on it. But the shape is very easy to tell as different from the standard kind, even from a distance. And some other similar examples, they're usually made out of a silvery metal. So a lot of times different color from the standard national plate. But the shape is the biggest thing that will, there's a little bit better, a little closer example of the icon. But they're normally identifiable by the shape. Okay, next we're going to talk about Hokuriku. So Fukui, Ishikawa, and Toyama prefectures. with Fukui being another of the special cases we'll talk about at the end. These are also very much up there in terms of identifiability because they are very long horizontal plates. This set, these, not sure how to describe it, but these here is one of the symbols or logos for the regional company, and this is similar to the Tohoku one, but one of the other logos. And here we can see that even the national plate, because we can tell by the logo and NTT on this, even the national plate also adheres to the like long horizontal. So all plates, and there's usually several of them, like 2, 3, or 4 like this, will all be this shape, so also identifiable. And there's a slightly clear image of that logo, but also from a distance, not probably one of the easier ones to identify. There's also an advanced clue for these that we'll come back to at the end. Next, we're going to talk about Chubu, which is Nagano, Gifu, Aichi, Mie, and Shizuoka prefectures. Nagano is the last special case that we'll talk about at the end. And then Mie and Shizuoka are also worth mentioning because there's slight overlap with other power companies. So like around here, when you get to like the Izu Peninsula here, is actually part of the Tokyo region. So you'll only find these Chubu flutes that I'm about to talk about in the western side of Shizuoka. And very, very far south in Mie, you can find some Kansai plates, which is another region we'll talk about over here. But that's only in very select areas, just in the south. These are one of the last, like, not like clearly identifiable plates, like even from a distance, because they're rounded and can be yellow or white. So they can even be different colors. This frilly looking shape is the typical logo you'll see on them. And another example, national plate. So again, one of the last ones that's easily identifiable, and that is this area of Japan right in here. To move on to Tokyo, because that overlaps with Chubu a little bit. Again, so this very easternmost part of Shizuoka is part of this, and otherwise it's the rest of what we have here. Chiba, Ibaraki, Tochigi, Gunma, Saitama, Tokyo, Kanagawa, and Yamanashi prefectures. They're the typical, here's one here, and they're the typically similar or the same size and shape as the standard set, but there are other ways to identify them. So this is one logo that you can find, but the identifiable part of Tokyo plates are typically, or Kanto plates also called, is numbers or characters, 3 of them down the middle, with some other characters at the like in this case 2 kanji and 3 numbers. But this pattern is specific to Tokyo, and additionally, not always handwritten. Let's see, yeah, not always handwritten like this, but you'll also times find them made of this very silvery metal, which in terms of standard size plates is used in Tokyo way more often than any other region. So even from a distance, if you see the like very different color of the plate, in this case like a silvery metallic gray, then can be relatively confident that it's a Tokyo plate. And as you can see, all of these have characters across the top and characters that go down the middle, and are relatively basic other than that. And again, that's in around Tokyo. Next, I'm gonna skip all the way down to Okinawa. So these islands all the way far south of Honshu. So these islands in here, I don't remember like all the names and everything, are actually part of Kagoshima Prefecture. But once you get to the main island of Okinawa and south of that, that's the region like these plates are referring to because that's what makes up Okinawa Prefecture. So a lot of times, you can find three plates on a pole, three normal sized plates on in Okinawa. You can also do that in some other regions, as we'll see, but Okinawa definitely is like the only prefecture where a really sizable number of the poles um, fit this have three separate plates on them. In this case, one's a national plate, one has a lot of lines through it, like the different numbers or characters, as we'll see, are separated by lines, and this one is like a relatively basic one. And there's some variance in the like layout. Like this one's pretty different from anything we saw here, but the characteristics are mostly the same, where we have like three plates, and one of the plates has several lines separating it. In Okinawa, just like Hokkaido, is one of the easier regions to identify without plates. So, um, but still very useful. Moving on to Shikoku. So now we're in the regions where the plates are increasingly like standard and a little tricky to tell apart from each other. But there are still, well, that just means we start relying more on the character arrangements and the company logos. The Shikoku logo is very easy to remember because the main one is four dots, like this one, just representing each prefecture. That in this case, Kagawa, Ehime, Tokushima, and Kochi. One dot representing each prefecture that makes up Shikoku. But other than that, they're typically similar size, shape, color, so on and so forth to some other regional plates and also just the national plates. But they do have a fairly distinctive character arrangement in that they normally have characters across the top like this and a small amount or a small arrangement in this kind of shape halfway down the plate on the left side, and sometimes can also have some things at the very bottom. And we'll just see more examples of that. So it's like sometimes they can have more than just these initial three, but just like in this plate, we have like four katakana characters across the top and these on the left side partway down. This one is a little harder to tell, but we have the logo again. And even though we have more characters, we still have the ones across the top, and they're kind of based out of the left side, starting halfway down. And the last thing we want to talk about with Shikoku is not a plate at all, but this black and yellow stripe thing. You won't see on every pole. In fact, it's in, and also not like most of them, but they're fairly common, and they are Shikoku specific. So if you ever see that, even if you can't really make out like this is the Shikoku plate here, and if you can't make out like this, then this will tell you that you are somewhere on Shikoku. And again, that's this island separated from Honshu and Kyushu. Moving on to Kansai. Actually, this should probably be at the end because these are probably the hardest to identify. But this is the area around Osaka and includes Hyogo, Kyoto, Shiga, Osaka, Nara. I actually didn't mean to color Mie there, but Wakayama at the end. So Kansai plates, I'm just going to kind of click through them, typically do not have a logo, but in every region or most regions, you can get some plates that don't have the logo, but in Kansai, it's very, very rare to have a logo of some kind. And they're pretty standard sized and shape, but and also can vary pretty widely in terms of like character arrangements and setup and so forth. One thing, if you remember, like the lines that separated characters on the Okinawa plates, Kansai plates sometimes have like one or two of them, about 2/3 the way down the plate, and that can be fairly distinctive. But and also here's an example of where we actually have 3 plates. But again, that's most common in Okinawa, but you can also find Kansai is another place where you can find that. But as you can see here, as you can see across all these different examples, the arrangement can uh, vary somewhat. So you might want to also rely on other clues to identify Kansai plates. And also, again, not me. I colored that one on accident. Moving on to Chugoku, which is Yamaguchi, Hiroshima, Okayama, Tottori, and Shimane. Some of you might know like Yamaguchi has like the yellow guardrails, and Shimane, Hiroshima, and Yamaguchi are also famous for having the red tile roofs. So there are certainly other things that kind of people commonly use to identify this region, but they also are relatively distinctive in terms of their plates. So instead of normal plates, sometimes they can have these larger, made of a different material plates. And instead of a company logo, they typically have, okay, so a little easier to see on this one, the word energia written on instead of a logo. So if you see a plate that has like Latin letters written across the top and it's not a national plate, like it doesn't say like NTT, then it's going to be Chugoku. As you can see, there's a couple different arrangements, but this is pretty just the larger ones with the straps going all the way around are pretty distinctive. Similar to the like black and yellow rings on Shikoku, Chugoku has a interesting region-specific clue, and that's these arrows are actually very, very common and are specific to this region. These yellow arrows strapped somewhere on the pole and typically pointing upwards. You could see there was even one hidden behind the main one here. And also, I think this is the last example I have up here that where that has 3 plates. That's more so just showing that it's possible, not that it's particularly common. Just like Kansai can happen, but the only place it does with any frequency is Okinawa. Moving on, almost to the end, we have Kyushu, the southernmost island made up of Kagoshima, Miyazaki, Kumamoto, Oita, Fukuoka, Saga, and Nagasaki. Not super different from the basic plates or like the Kansai plates, the Shikoku plates, but there are ways. So this is the most typical logo for Kyushu plates. It's just like how Shikoku was 4 dots for each prefecture. The Kyushu is 7 dots for the 7 prefectures in Kyushu, and also is very roughly in the same shape as the island, so also one of the easier ones to remember. The typical character arrangement is 3 numbers across the top, which do actually mean something, but don't, at least from what I've heard, but don't really worry about it because it's not really practical to learn, and even if you do learn it, it's only slightly useful. But it's 3 numbers across the top, and then characters typically going down the right side. These are 2 particularly good examples. They're not going to quite be all this clear, but that is the standard layout for Kyushu plates. So 3 numbers across the top, and then characters down the right side, and also these numbers here. So that's Kyushu. So those are the different regions. I guess sorry, I got through that kind of fast. Sorry if you need to go back and watch parts of it again. But so some of them are more distinctive than others, but none of them are really impossible to tell apart or identify, or so on and so forth. And there's enough different regions that they're very useful. Like you can get a pretty specific area oftentimes from the prefecture or from the plate. the last thing I want to go over is the special cases that I mentioned. And all I really mean by special cases is that they're at like an overlap between, like I called it Shizuoka an overlap as well, but these ones will have multiple region-specific plates at the same time. So I think the first one is Nagano, like I have here, is a Chubu plate, the rounded one, and also Hokuriku plate, the like long horizontal one. Like in this case here and also here, because typically what it is, and same thing with the other ones that we'll see, it's that they use the longer Hokuriku like national like NTT plate, that like the Hokuriku that different way of doing it, but will then also have their other region specific plate. So this is what Nagano's looks like. This is what Niigata's look like. So it's a combination of Tohoku and the Hokuriku NTT plates. And then Fukui, it's only the western part of Fukui, and this is not all of it's most or all of the poles. This part, this was kind of just showing the boundaries within Fukui. Have again the Hokuriku national plate, but then the Kansai plate. So we'll actually this is a second example of Niigata. So we'll have Kansai, but Fukui will have Kansai plates and Hokuriku national plates. So these are three prefectures where if you see these specific combinations or arrangements, it not only tells you the region, it tells you the specific prefecture. So especially like on prefecture streaks or just in general, very, very useful things to remember. Now we're going to go back to some specific, more advanced tips, but this one at least is still quite useful. So in Hokuriku, the numbers, so it can be difficult to remember which one or tell which one, because like an example like this, like there's 4 of them. But the one that has a 4-digit number in the top left corner, a katakana character in the bottom left corner, and then just other characters on the rest of the plate, this number could tell you the region. Because they're actually like each plate is individually numbered. And that's split up like this. So Toyama Prefecture is the 0, 1, 2, and 3 first digits of this 4-digit number. And Ishikawa is 4, 5, 6, 7, and Fukui, again, only the eastern part of Fukui, because over here we have the Kansai plates instead. But up here we have 8 and 9. So for this one, which starts with an 8, it's 8085, it looks like. That's going to be up here. That's going to be, I think it's in Fukuishi proper. This one starts with 9, so it's going to be south of, or I guess like central Fukui. Can't really tell that one. This one is a 3, so this one, it says up here, is Toyama, and specifically all the way up here. And so especially on prefecture streaks, this is pretty important because it can be easy to lose like a toss-up between the 3. But if you can, one of these is visible, then you can find the exact prefecture. Again, really only worry about the first number and not the most important clue to learn, but very interesting and important for prefecture streaks. There is a very similar thing for Hokkaido that's, and I'll put both of these graphics in the description, I think. The 2 numbers that you see at the top of the rows of numbers on a Tokyo plate, or on a Hokkaido plate, sorry, are region specific. Like in this case, it's 52, so we're just going to be in Ashikawa. And this one it's harder to see, not as zoomed in, but it says 20. And so it's just going to be Hakodate. And you have to be, and like this one as 53, it's another example, is going to be out here, east of Ashikawa. You're not very often going to be like in a position, like you're not going to have a lock where you can easily make out what the numbers are. So probably the least useful thing I'm talking about in this video, but still Hokkaido is very big and you can lose a lot of points, like or like in duels, like you can lose or gain a lot of HP. So it could be important, but I don't. It's not like I have all of these memorized. I remember like Sapporo's 41, Hakodate's 20, Ashikawa's 52, and that's kind of the end of how much I worry about it. But it is very interesting that it's the case. Thanks all for watching, and good luck using this in the future. I hope it was useful.